You're watching Forsaken Joe. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Enjoy the story. Let's begin. I was scraping the last of the grease off the skillet when I heard her phone buzz from the kitchen counter. I glanced over. A text popped up from Julia, her friend. "So, when are you walking away from him?" My hand stilled, the sponge half sunk in suds. Something cold trickled down my spine. I didn't want to look, but my thumb was already on the phone. I opened the thread. The message that followed was clear. "After I get the down payment, I'm out." I froze, the words making less sense the more I read them. I wasn't stupid. I knew exactly what this was. Her plans, all laid out, and I wasn't part of them. I set the phone back down, calm as I could manage. I finished wiping the skillet, then wiped the counter, putting everything back in place like nothing had changed. She came in a few minutes later, wrapped in a towel, wet hair dripping. "Hey, how was dinner?" "Good," I said, like it was any other night. I didn't let my eyes linger on her, just grabbed the dish towel and wiped my hands. She smiled and turned, moving toward the hallway. "Great. You still up for that visioning retreat on Saturday?" "Yeah, sure." I didn't look at her. I just felt something shift, something I couldn't ignore. I didn't sleep that night. As soon as I was sure she was out, I slipped into the office. The soft hum of the desk lamp filled the silence, and I stared at the blank spreadsheet on the screen. It was titled Exit Readiness. I started with the basics. Her hybrid paid off. My truck almost paid off. The house, in both our names, joint savings. I ran my fingers over the keys slowly, methodically. Everything we built together, everything I had given without question. It seemed simple on the surface. Assets were assets. But I knew there was more to this. So much more. I opened a new tab and typed division plan. I didn't need to think about the emotions right now. Those could wait. This was just logistics. The pattern had been building for a while. She'd started talking more about reclaiming independence the past few months, and I'd shrugged it off. I hadn't read too much into it, but now I couldn't ignore the signs. Her vague questions about my accounts, her sudden focus on things that felt like they were supposed to be mine. Then there were the touches, the hugs that lingered just a little too long, the small gestures, holding my hand when we watched TV, the way she would lean into me when we stood in the kitchen. It felt choreographed, like she was setting the stage for something. I kept staring at the screen, typing and deleting, then typing again. The house, the savings. It was all going to need to be divided. The last thing I needed was to jump into a fight now. That wouldn't do me any good. I needed her to show her hand first. Confirmation, not conflict. Every time she asked about my accounts, I could feel the weight of it. But I said nothing. No point in giving her ammunition. And I'd learned over the years that silence often spoke louder than words. I thought about her recent shift, the way she'd been more affectionate suddenly. It felt like she was trying to soften the blow of something she already knew she was going to do. Maybe she wasn't sure yet, but she was preparing. I ran a hand through my hair and let the numbers fill the screen. No matter what, I had to stay calm. No drama, no outbursts, just precision. I spent the next few days waiting, watching, and letting the tension build. When Saturday rolled around and she left for her retreat, I got to work. I opened a blank document and typed a few lines of nonsense, just formal enough to seem credible. The letter was vague but specific enough to unsettle. It was about a federal investigation into asset irregularities. Nothing that could be tied to me directly, but enough to make anyone second-guess their next move. I printed it out, sealed it in a plain manila envelope, and placed it in my desk drawer, just barely ajar. I had to make sure she saw it. I spent the afternoon trimming the hedges out front, making sure I was visible through the window when she got home. The timing had to be right. I wasn't stupid enough to make it too obvious, just enough to spark doubt. Around 4, I saw her car pull into the driveway. She parked, cut the engine, and then paused. I didn't turn to look at her. I kept trimming the bushes, focusing on the steady snip of the shears. But I could feel her eyes on me, and I could see her out of the corner of my eye, standing still for just a moment longer than usual. She walked past the window, and I watched her glance at the desk, then the envelope. She didn't stop, but she did hesitate for a split second before walking inside. I finished what I was doing, slowly, deliberately, letting the silence stretch. When she came in, she was quieter than usual, her usual easy chatter replaced by an odd, careful energy. I didn't ask her about the retreat. I didn't need to. She set her bag down by the door, then walked into the kitchen. "Dinner?" she asked, opening the fridge, her voice flat. I glanced at her but didn't answer right away. Something had changed in her posture. She didn't sit down, didn't start talking about renovations or plans for the future. That was her thing, the way she'd go on and on about the next chapter. Tonight, she skipped it. "I'll order something," I said, keeping my tone neutral. I didn't feel like pretending tonight. She nodded, pulling a bottle of wine from the fridge but then putting it back, her movements stiff. She didn't mention anything about the letter, but the silence between us felt thick now. I didn't say anything either. Just let the moment sit, knowing the shift in her was real. Her usual ease had been replaced with something else, and I could see it in the way she was avoiding looking at me. Her hand brushed against mine as she reached for a glass. A small touch, the kind that used to feel natural. This time, though, it was calculated. She was testing something, waiting for my reaction. I didn't give her one. The next week was strange. It was like she was playing a part, performing the version of herself she thought I wanted to see. She ramped up the sweetness, but it wasn't natural. Small gestures, like making my coffee just the way I liked it in the morning, or leaving a note on my pillow that said, "I'm grateful for you." Each time I felt the tension in my chest tighten, knowing she was working an angle. Then there was the home listing she left on the counter. It was a glossy brochure with a luxury property on it, the kind that felt like a fantasy. Our next chapter? She'd scribbled on the top in marker, like I didn't know what she was doing. She talked more about joint goals that week too, about what we could achieve together. She kept slipping in that phrase, protecting my energy, as if she was trying to justify the distance she'd been creating, or maybe as a way of testing if I'd bite. But I didn't. I just nodded along like it was a normal conversation. Her friends started visiting more often. Every time I came into a room, the conversation stopped abruptly. A sudden silence. I could almost hear them scrambling to cover up whatever they'd been talking about. But they didn't fool me. It was like a broken record, and I was already over it. One afternoon, I was in the living room when I overheard her talking on the phone. She was in the kitchen, and the sound of her voice was muffled, but I caught enough. "Just get your name on it first," she said. It was enough to make my stomach tighten. I didn't know who she was talking to, but I didn't need to. Later that night, she came into the living room where I was sitting, flipping through a book. She hovered at the doorway for a moment, like she was debating whether or not to speak. "Hey," she said, sitting on the arm of the couch. Her voice was soft, almost too soft. "Hey," I replied, not looking up. She leaned in closer, as if she were trying to catch my eye. But I kept mine on the page, letting the silence between us stretch longer than it needed to. Her hand brushed my shoulder, a gesture too casual to be accidental. "I've been thinking, about everything. The future." I didn't react. "Yeah?" I kept my tone easy, the same as any other night. She studied me. I could feel her eyes on me, even without looking. She was trying to read me, figure out where I stood. But I gave her nothing. "Are you okay?" she asked, like she didn't already know. "Yeah," I said, keeping my gaze steady on the page. "Just tired." Her fingers drummed lightly on the armrest. "You sure? You're kinda distant lately." I glanced up at her then, just for a second, meeting her eyes. There was nothing in my face, no emotion, just the calm, the quiet. "I'm fine," I said. Then I turned the page. She didn't push further, but I could tell she was disappointed, maybe hoping I'd slip, maybe fishing for a crack in the facade. I didn't give it to her. She sat there a little longer before standing, then walking back to the kitchen. I knew she wasn't done. She'd try again, but I wasn't going anywhere. I started making moves in the background. No more waiting, no more wondering. I adjusted my direct deposit, routing most of my paycheck into a new account. The joint account we'd shared for years, where we'd both put in and taken out, was now just a reminder of what I needed to disentangle. I went to the bank the next day, opened a safe deposit box. I didn't need to pack everything up now, but I did need to make sure I had the essentials. Key documents, the deed to the house, some old photos, a few things I didn't want to lose in case things got ugly. I also slipped in a backup drive with everything I could need, from financials to passwords. It was simple, straightforward. If it came down to it, I'd have everything locked up tight. I didn't tell her about the new account, didn't mention the deposit changes. I didn't need to. It would become clear soon enough. Next, I moved subscriptions off the joint card. No point in keeping anything linked if I wasn't sure where this was headed. I left the essentials though, utilities, the car insurance, the things that mattered for now. The rest, I cut the fluff. I printed a clean separation agreement from a no-nonsense lawyer. It was simple. No drama, no games. Just a straightforward way out if things went south. I signed it, dated it, and left it in my desk drawer, ready. That weekend, I staged a few neutral cardboard boxes in the garage. I didn't pack them, but they were visible, just enough for her to notice if she was paying attention. I wasn't going to make a scene, not yet, but I needed to give her something to chew on. The following evening, she walked into the living room, her usual quiet energy filling the space. She was holding her phone, glancing between it and me. "I was thinking, I need some space," she said, the words hanging in the air, like they'd been rehearsed. I didn't look up right away, but I knew exactly what she meant. I leaned back in my chair, meeting her eyes for the first time that day. "You can have it," I said, voice calm. "You can take the car for the week if you want." Her eyes flickered just for a second before she caught herself. "Yeah, I might take you up on that." I didn't wait for her to say more. "The keys are by the door." She stood there for a moment, not moving, like she was trying to decide if I was testing her, if I was playing some game. But I wasn't. I was done waiting. She nodded and walked toward the door. The sound of her footsteps echoed in the quiet house, but she didn't turn back. I didn't care whether she took the car or not, but I did care that she was starting to realize I was serious. Sunday morning, she left with a yoga bag slung over her shoulder and a suitcase that didn't quite match the occasion. She said she needed clarity. I helped her with the bag, kissed her on the cheek, and didn't say anything else. There was nothing left to say. "See you soon," she said, like she was trying to make it sound like it was some kind of casual break, not the beginning of whatever was coming. "Yeah," I replied. She walked out without looking back. I didn't watch her go. I stayed still for a moment, feeling the quiet settle in. Then I turned and walked to the guest room. No drama, no arguments, just a quiet shift. And that's how it had to be. Days passed. I stayed in my lane, keeping the routine as normal as possible. She texted a couple of times. Soft check-ins, nothing pointed. I didn't react. It was like she was trying to figure out why her plan wasn't landing the way she'd thought it would. Maybe she expected me to chase, to question what she was doing, to try and talk about what was going on. But I wasn't going to do that. One afternoon, a few of our mutual friends reached out. Coded questions like they were fishing for information. I knew what they were trying to do. Find out if things were falling apart, if she'd told me what was really happening. But I gave them nothing, just short answers, no details, no explanation. She extended her clarity break, said she needed more time, more space. I updated my lawyer, letting them know what was happening, making sure we were ready. I finished consolidating every joint asset we had. I didn't need her approval for any of it. I was taking control of what I could. She had to know. She had to see me moving forward, making decisions, not waiting around like I had been. No more wondering. The silence between us was getting louder every day, and I wasn't afraid of it anymore. It was just me now, and I was done letting her decide what happened next. She came by the next day for more clothes. I knew why. She needed to see if there was any sign of confrontation, anything that would give her a hint about where I stood. But I didn't give her any of that. I gave her the energy I'd give a colleague I was barely acquainted with. Polite, distant, neutral. She lingered near the door while I packed a few things for her, like it was a normal exchange. I didn't look at her while I folded the clothes, didn't offer small talk. I wasn't going to give her the satisfaction of seeing any cracks. "Thanks," she said, her voice a little too soft, like she was waiting for me to say something else. "Yeah," I replied, handing her the bag, my tone flat. "Anything else?" She didn't answer right away, just stood there, eyes flicking to my office door, then back at me. I felt the weight of her stare, but I didn't acknowledge it. She wanted me to ask her what was going on, to pull some confession out of her. But I wasn't playing that game. The phone rang while she was still standing there, her mother. She picked up, talking quietly, the words floating in the background. I couldn't hear much, but I could tell she was fishing, asking vague questions, trying to get a read on me. I finished what I was doing, making sure to stay calm, to keep the mask on. I heard her laugh a little too loudly into the phone, but the energy in the room felt off. She was trying to get something out of me, but I didn't bite. I stepped into my office, closed the door behind me. I heard her still talking on the phone, her voice lower now, but I didn't care. I didn't pick up the phone when it rang again later that day. It was her, texting, then calling, then texting again. But I wasn't in the mood for games anymore. A few hours later, I got a DM from a mutual acquaintance. someone I hadn't talked to in months. The message was brief. She's panicking. She thinks you froze everything. I nearly laughed. The truth was, I hadn't frozen anything. I'd just moved silently, keeping my cards close. I hadn't made a scene. I wasn't trying to blow up her life. I was just letting things unfold. I didn't reply to her message, but the ripple had already hit. The subtle changes were starting to show. She was losing control of her exit plan. I saw the next texts she sent me, a mix of nostalgia, blame, then some flattery. She wanted me to soften. She wanted me to be the person I was before, the one who would cave when she turned on the charm, but I didn't reply, not a word. I watched as she scrambled. The gym guy, the one she'd been spending more time with, started to pull away. I could see it. Her backup plan was fading. Her fantasy of an easy exit was crumbling, piece by piece. I didn't have to do anything. I just had to stay still, let the silence work. Let her realize I wasn't the one who would break. I wasn't the one who was going to fall for this again. And I knew, without a doubt, she could feel it. I booked a flight to Madeira on a whim, solo, 2 weeks. I needed to get away, clear my head, breathe without the constant weight of everything hanging over me. I didn't feel the need to explain it to her. I didn't owe her that anymore. Madeira was a different world. The air was fresh, the sky wide and blue. Stone paths wove through the hills, and the ocean stretched out like a promise. I barely thought about anything back home. I posted one photo, my feet on a terrace, the ocean below, just a sliver of sky above, no caption. I didn't need to say anything more. The first text from her came an hour later. "Are you okay?" I didn't respond right away. I let the phone dim. I wasn't going to give her any reassurance, no quick replies. Let her sit with her own questions for a change. The texts kept coming. At first, just a little curiosity. "I'm just checking in. I thought you'd be back by now." I left them unread, let her stew. Then came the regret. "I miss you." I didn't react. It wasn't real. I knew what this was, a shift in strategy. She was trying to hook me back in, trying to find the way to get me to bite. And then it shifted again. "Let's take a trip when you're back." I didn't answer. A few hours later, a screenshot appeared. It was from her, but the conversation wasn't between us. It was between her and Gym Guy. The message was clear. "Handle your stuff before we talk again." She thought she could pull that off. She thought I wouldn't notice, wouldn't see it for what it was, but I did. It was exactly what I'd been waiting for, the final sign that her plan was falling apart. I didn't respond to her, not even a "got it" or a "we'll talk later." Nothing. Her next move? She tried to triangulate, going through friends. Texts, calls, vague questions, the usual. Trying to play her cards, seeing if anyone would give her the answer she wanted. I stayed silent, and then her mother texted me. "You were good to her." I see it now. I almost laughed, but I didn't. I just stared at the screen. Her mother, finally catching up, finally seeing what had been there the whole time. I typed a response, short, dignified. I did my best. That was it. No warmth, no bitterness, just the truth, and I left it at that. Her strategy was unraveling, piece by piece. I didn't need to push. I didn't need to do anything. I just had to keep walking forward. When I got back to New Jersey, I didn't waste any time. I scheduled the meeting in a strip mall office, the kind that rented out by the hour. Sterile, neutral. It felt fitting. She was already sitting there when I walked in, nervously flipping through papers, waiting. The air was tight with the same tension it had been for months. I didn't greet her with any warmth, just sat down, pulled the separation agreement out of my bag, and slid it across the table. She glanced at it, her face briefly softening. She skimmed the first few lines, the realization settling in. Her eyes flicked to me, then back down to the paper, scanning it like she thought there was some loophole she'd missed. "This is it?" she asked, her voice low, almost disappointed. "Yep," I said. "It's fair. It's final." She didn't argue. She just stared at it for a long moment, the silence thick between us. Finally, she signed it with a little pout, like she was trying to make me feel bad for her. When she pushed the papers back to me, she tried one last play. "You want to go to dinner? To honor the good times?" I didn't even flinch. "No." Her shoulders slumped, but she didn't say anything else. She grabbed her things and walked out, but I didn't care. I wasn't here to save anything. Back home, I changed the locks. I updated the paperwork. Everything that needed to be in my name now was. I moved her final boxes out of the garage, not with anger, just with a quiet resolve. I wasn't holding on to any of this for her. I was keeping the house because it was mine now. Not as a trophy, but as proof I'd rebuilt, and I wasn't going to let anyone take that from me. The next few weeks felt different. Life started to hum again. I got up early, running at dawn the way I used to before all of this. The mornings felt like they were mine. I'd sit on the porch after, sipping coffee, talking with my sister about the small things, the stuff that didn't matter, but somehow did. It felt peaceful. Then the email came, her last attempt to smooth things over. She wrote an apology, a long one, filled with regret and blame and the usual excuses. She tried to soften it, to make it sound like it wasn't all her fault, but I didn't need to read it. I archived the email, didn't respond, her address filtered into silence. That was it. The door closed. I spent the next few months settling into a rhythm. It wasn't just about getting through the days. It was about what I'd gained. Clarity, control, calm. For the first time in a long time, I was moving through my life with a sense of certainty. No more second guessing. No more wondering where things would land. I had made my decisions and I was sticking to them. I booked 2 plane tickets for a trip in the fall. One in my name, one left blank. I wasn't expecting someone to fill that seat, but if they did, that was fine. If not, I was still going. The world was wide, and I didn't need anyone else to define my path. In the quiet of the evenings, I pulled out the notebook I had kept in the kitchen drawer for years. I'd filled it with random notes, ideas, reminders. I opened it to a new page and wrote a question at the top. What did I protect? I sat there for a while, staring at the words, letting the answer come to me. When it did, it was simple. My ability to walk away without screaming. It wasn't dramatic, it wasn't anything grand, but it was the truth. I'd protected my peace, my sense of self. I'd chosen silence when I could have fought, and I didn't let anyone take that away from me. I kept building from there. I planned new trips, places I'd always wanted to see, places that didn't remind me of anything but freedom. At work, I streamlined processes, found ways to make things more efficient, more satisfying. I moved at my own pace now, slower, steadier, without the pressure of someone else's expectations pushing me forward. The ocean had gotten the last word, but I had written the final chapter. I had walked away on my own terms, and for the first time in a long time, I knew exactly who I was and where I was going.